Well, good afternoon. I'm Ed Ullmann from Wellness RX Pharmacy. For the past 4 modules, we've been trying to bring a focus to 7 key challenges that is facing the American healthcare system today and, of course, our citizens. The first one was to understand that the COVID pandemic has exposed many limitations and many holes in our healthcare system, especially the challenge of providing equity and fairness to all Americans. And the challenge we now have is to understand that we have an exhausted healthcare system and we have exhausted healthcare workers. And this has led to the largest number of health professionals retiring early in our history. Now, putting that into a context, that if you take all of those early retirements and then you add it to the health professionals that through the mandation of vaccinations that decided not to get vaccinated, so they left the healthcare system, we now have on a net basis about a 3% reduction in clinical access right now for our citizens. So going forward with COVID, we need to deal with that issue, and we need to deal with it in particular in the south of this country that's been growing along with the Midwest, where they had even the greatest amount of shortages of primary care doctors in particular, and now we're dealing with the early retirements. So we have to deal with this, and we also have to deal with the recognition that our public health system has been very separate from the American healthcare delivery system. And we need to know how to best prepare for the next pandemic that could occur, and how do those two worlds, the public health world and the healthcare world, communicate with each other. The second challenge that we wanted to present in these lectures was, can our country continue to afford to spend 18% of its wealth on healthcare services? Again, 18%, that's 100% greater than the amount we spend on public education and for our military combined together. We can't spend more than that. But if we decide that we can't go beyond 18%, then tough decisions now have to be made today for tomorrow's kids. The third challenge is that, like access to clean water and public education, should access to healthcare services also be considered a basic human right in America? Now, we've been asking this question for at least 40 to 50 years. We keep kicking the issue down the road, but America has to make that decision. Is health care a basic human right similar to access to clean water and public education? And if we do decide that it is, then that has to be the central core which will guide our policy decisions going forward. The fourth question we wanted to ask is, should market forces remain the dominant driver of the American healthcare system? And then the resulting consolidation that a market-driven economy will produce is to put more power and more resources in the hands of less individuals or organizations. Now, what we have to decide is, do we want us to continue in that direction? And we also have to decide that, do we want to see more of our healthcare delivery of services to be more nonprofit or by for-profit corporations? So we can make that decision as an American public, so we can help guide our policymakers and where we want to go. The fifth one is can we as a nation continue to operate a disease-based system of care that puts access to prevention and wellness and primary care services secondary to specialty and high-tech services? We can show all the fallout that occurs, but can we continue to do that? And then sixth is, as high-tech medicine, especially gene therapy and genetic engineering, right, these are promising. They are producing good results, but we must ask ourselves, can we manage this process ethically and with fairness, or will it end up managing us? And the last question that we have to ask ourselves is, can we, as Americans, can we continue with the lifestyle that we are operating with now, that is just continuing to lead with more obesity in our country, more chronic illnesses, more anxiety, more depression, more sleep deprivation, and more public health challenges like domestic violence and suicides and homicides and drug overdoses? This is a trend that we need to face up with, because if we do not understand that this all leads to more pressure on our healthcare delivery system, which will be more pressure on healthcare costs, which will mean more pressure on making tougher decisions. Right now, we've been able to balance this with the medically uninsured, and we're now up to 14%. But in the future, I can guarantee you, we don't make changes, we're going to end up as consumers paying more out of pocket, and there's going to be more cost shifting, and it's going to hurt. So these are the decisions that we were trying to get us to think about on our first 4 modules. And then our final 2 modules will then be focused on what are ways that we at least can look at that are positive for us to make decisions so we can develop a sustainable health care system for tomorrow's kids. Thank you again for listening, and hope you can catch us on our last 2 modules.